Hello, our topic is geodetic houses and the geodetic astromap. The geodetic astromap is not the most popular astromap. The astromap that's used most often in astrology is often called an astrocartography astromap. I talk about that in other tutorial videos, but some astrologers use this geodetic astromap, claim that it's fantastically important. So if you're interested in it, I've made this video to explain what it is. And the geodetic astromap and the geodetic houses are based on this idea that there's a grid around the world. So let me show you the grid. Is the simplest way to get going with geodetic houses. I'm in the Series 2.0 software. I'm looking at the chart of Jimmy Carter. It's the tropical chart with Placidus houses. He has 26 degrees Libra rising. And we're going to be looking at his chart in this video. But first I want to show you the geodetic, what's called the geodetic reference map in this software. So I'm going to go to Maps, select an astromap, and I've got selected here local space, geodetic, zodiac signs. These are the kinds of astromaps, and this gives me access to some of these more specialized maps like local space, Paran maps, Arabic parts maps, and also the geodetic reference map, which I had selected earlier, so it's the default. And I want to do the entire world, so I'm going to select world here for demonstration purposes. So I'll click OK, and this will show you what the geodetic astromap is all about. It's a grid. There it is. We see 0 Aries, red line. That means the midheaven is 0 Aries, and it goes right through London, England. And here, 0 Taurus, this is the midheaven. So there's a house system for the world. Instead of a house system for per person, there's a grid, an astrological grid placed around the globe, and that grid gives two things: a midheaven position and an ascendant position. So this means, according to this grid, that let's take Madrid, Spain, for example. Here's Spain. That little dot is Madrid. It says Madrid here. May be difficult for you to read on this lower resolution, smaller size that we make these videos. But anyway, there's Madrid, Spain. So if this is Pisces midheaven and this is Aries midheaven, it's towards the end of Pisces. So late Pisces midheaven. What is the ascendant? The geodetic ascendant in Madrid. Here's 0 Cancer on the ascendant. The yellow is the ascendant. Here's 0 Leo. Looks about halfway, so it's about mid Cancer. So that's it. That's the geodetic houses. It's a grid placed around the world, and according to this grid, the country of Spain has Cancer rising. That's part of its personality. It's permanently imprinted on the globe. Does it make sense? Most of Africa has Cancer rising. Leo rising in Eastern Europe, etc. Let's see, this includes the Middle East, Leo rising. I live in North Florida in the USA. That's Aries rising. Here's where Aries rising, the 0 Aries and the 0 Capricorn are vertical. The rest of the rising degrees curve around, and same thing with 0 Cancer on the midheaven and 0 Libra rising, they're vertical. Why are these 2 points have a vertical ascendant line right on top of the midheaven line? It's just because that's how houses are calculated. These houses are the house that's associated with the midheaven at that location, and that's just how they're how the mathematics, the calculations work out. So you can look at it, see if it makes sense. Now you also may think, why is 0 Aries going through London? Well, the idea is that the longitudes and latitudes worked out perfectly. London is a major center of the world. It ended up being the center of longitude and latitudes, and it's believed the zodiac matches it. Now, there are a few astrologers, not many, who historically have played with the idea of moving this midheaven elsewhere. I remember reading one person said it actually goes through Jerusalem is like the center of the world, and that's where the the zero Aries on the midheaven should be, or maybe you believe the zero Aries ascendant should be somewhere. So other people have, a few people have experimented with other ideas, but almost, over 90%, way over 90% of astrologers who use Geodetic do it this way. And we'll see in the software you can move this. If you are one of those astrologers who has a different idea about this, you can move this point in this particular software. So that's it. That's what geodetic houses are all about. And if we select a smaller location, we'll see more detail. Instead of every sign, it'll show us intermediate positions. Let me show you. If I right click to get to my settings and I select Europe, I've still got the same selection here, Geodetic reference map. There's that zero Aries going through exactly zero longitude on the east side of London. So it's the same thing I showed you before. Here's the zero Taurus, but it's just filled in more detail. So now it goes every 5 degrees. So a very nice feature of the software that as you zoom in, it shows you more detailed information, and you can see more exactly where the geodetic house cusps are. Let's see, here's our Madrid, Spain. We see it's actually a little after 15 Cancer, between 15 and 20 on the ascendant, and a little after 25 Pisces on the midheaven. And if we zoom in further, we would see that even more exactly. Okay, so let me go back to my PowerPoint to see what we've got here summarized for our ideas. Number one, geodetic houses, what are they? They're a grid placed on the globe. We just looked at that grid. We looked at it for the world, we zoomed in to Europe and saw it for Europe. Now notice, point number two, geodetic houses are the same for all people in a particular place, aren't they? Because it's a house system for the globe. So everyone born in London, England, everyone born in Madrid, Spain, everybody born in Chicago, Illinois, anywhere. It's a house system for that location. So everybody born in that location is going to have the same houses. So it's not as personal in the sense that everybody born in the same place has the same geodetic houses. But if this idea of geodetic houses is true, if it's valid, then it would show you your connection to a world situation. So this can be very important, for example, for political people who influence world conditions. How does their chart relate to this global house system, this global grid that's placed on the world? That's the idea. So here I ask the question, does it make sense that Spain and a large part of Africa have Cancer rising? People who are believers in geodetic houses believe it's true. And also, in astrology, we put most of the emphasis on the rising sign. The midheaven sign can also be important. Okay. Now, let me show you how geodetic houses can be important for an individual, according to this theory. If you believe in geodetic houses, you can use it with individuals. And we're going to take a political person, Jimmy Carter, former president of the United States. One reason I'm using him is because his birth time is from a birth certificate, and as former president of the United States, he was a major political person. So to demonstrate these ideas again, let's go back to Sirius, right click, and I'm going to select Plains, Georgia, which is where he was born. I'm going to zoom in a little bit just so we can see this in detail. Maybe that's enough. Doesn't really matter too much. And so now I'm going to click OK, and I'm just looking at the geodetic reference map for the area around where Jimmy Carter was born. He was born in this little town of Plains, Georgia, and the geodetic ascendant is what? 9 Aries, right? Just after 9 Aries. What's the geodetic midheaven? For this location, remember, it's a house system for a location. For Plains, Georgia, it's about halfway, a little more than halfway between 5 and 6 Capricorn, so it's going to be a little more than 5.5 degrees Capricorn. Okay, now let me show you this. I'm going to close this window. Here's Jimmy Carter's chart, his birth chart. He happens to have 26 Libra rising, etc. Let's select geodetic houses for him. What should the houses be? Should be what we just saw, right? I just clicked on the geodetic map to call it up again. A little more than 9 Aries rising, a little more than 5.5 Capricorn on the midheaven for anybody born in Plains, Georgia. 9 Aries, 5.5 Capricorn. Can we remember that for a second as we go and we select settings, house system, and here it is, geodetic houses. So you can select geodetic houses for an individual. As we saw in the geodetic reference map, the geodetic houses define what the ascendant and midheaven is, and for the intermediate cusps, the 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 6th houses, and the houses opposite to those, we can use whatever house system we want. We have these choices here. Some of this menu is going off the captured area. This says with Campanus, intermediate cusps. I'm capturing just a part of my screen. We'll use Placidus intermediate cusps. I'll click OK, and there it is. The midheaven, I said, would be a little more than 5.5 Capricorn. It's 5 Capricorn 36. The ascendant should be a little more than 9 Aries, 9 Aries 07. So we have it. So we can see if you select geodetic houses for an individual, you'll get the houses in this 2nd and 3rd and 5th and 6th and all these intermediate cusps. I selected Placidus, and it tells me here we've selected tropical zodiac. Geodetic-Placidus means Placidus was used for the intermediate cusps for the geodetic ascendant and midheaven. Okay, so we see that. Now let's see if it makes any sense. I'm going to click on this again to pull up Jimmy Carter's Geodetic AstroMap, and let's right click and select the United States. Let's select the United States and let's do a planet map, and I'll explain what the planet map is. We'll click OK, and now we're seeing planet lines again in the chart. What is that all about? Well, I see a lot of lines here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to right click and let's zoom in, and let's go to the right a little bit. I want to show you something about Washington, D.C. for Jimmy Carter. So I've zoomed in to that area, and what it's showing is that, of course, his midheaven and ascendant go right through this point here where Plains, Georgia is. I've turned on the ascendant and midheaven, but they're not, you may or may not have them by default. That's not that important. What I want to show you right now is, notice Pluto opposite the midheaven, going just east of Washington, D.C. This little dot area here is Washington, D.C. Pluto opposite the midheaven means that in the geodetic map of the world, Jimmy Carter's Pluto is on the 4th house. Let me show you that. Let me explain that. Where's Pluto in Jimmy Carter's chart? 13.5 Cancer. 13 Cancer 32. Let's just round that off and call it 13.5 Cancer. Okay. Now, let's go back to the AstroMap and let's right click and select the geodetic reference map. And where is 13.5 Capricorn? Here's 13 Capricorn going right through Washington, D.C. This is 16. 13.5 is going to be here. So in other words, Jimmy Carter's Pluto, related to the geodetic map, comes right through here. And since this is a house system for the world, it would mean that in regards to worldly situations, Jimmy Carter has a Pluto opposite the midheaven, means on the fourth house, a connection right in the center of power, of political power in the United States, Washington, D.C. Doesn't sound great to most astrologers to have Pluto on the fourth house in Washington, D.C. You know, if you study the politics of what happened with Jimmy Carter, you could see if it makes sense. But again, the idea is this. I'm going to right-click, go back to the planet map, which means how your planets relate to the geodetic houses. So in regards especially to mundane affairs, which is very important for any political leader, we've got Pluto on Jimmy Carter's fourth house. We have Saturn opposite the ascendant, means Saturn on the seventh house. These would be tricky areas for, a little bit difficult if you consider Saturn to be a great malefic on the seventh house. Going through Hartford, Connecticut might mean that, or would mean, if you believe in geodetic houses, that Carter's going to have some Saturn seventh house issues, especially related to mundane affairs. Excuse me, to political affairs, which for a politician, of course, is important. Let's right-click and look at Europe with the planet map. And we see, for example, Saturn on the fourth house, going east of Kiev and so on. Did those kind of events and issues come up for him in those locations? So you've got the idea. This is what people who use geodetic maps emphasize, and they're especially important for your relationship to the world, because you're seeing how your planets interface with the houses of the world, how you connect with areas of the world and the mundane situations, the political situations, and so on in those areas. We can see here Neptune in the North Node, conjunct the ascendant going through St. Petersburg, right through that area. Okay, so that's the idea. Let's go back to the notes and see what I've got here. We looked at the geodetic map. We compared it to his chart. We saw that it all makes sense. We looked at Pluto opposite the midheaven, just east of Washington, D.C. I put an exclamation point because that looks a little, I might say, scary. You might want your president to have Sun trine midheaven or something like that. This would indicate, dealing with some complex internal issues. Saturn opposite the midheaven, just east of Cairo. Did we see that? Just east of Cairo. Let's see. Here's. I need to scroll down a little bit. I can do that here as well. There's Cairo, Egypt. Saturn opposite the midheaven. So this could indicate struggles, serious issues in his relationships with Egypt, since that's the political center of power in Egypt, just east of Kiev. So some issues maybe with Ukraine that are of a Saturn fourth house nature. Saturn opposite the midheaven. Does it make sense? Astrologers who use geodetic houses would say yes, and they would, come up with conclusions based on that. And here I talk about, if you look at where Saturn is in Jimmy Carter's chart, it's 1 degree 55 Scorpio. If you call up the geodetic reference map, you'll see in fact that it's going to put that Taurus line right about there. Let me show you that real quickly. I'll go back to the map, right click, select the reference map, click OK. We see the 0 Taurus midheaven going just west of Cairo. Means that in the world map, early Taurus is on the midheaven. If we look at Carter's chart, his Saturn is over here at almost 2 degrees Scorpio, early Scorpio. So Saturn in Jimmy Carter's chart, placed onto the map of the world, this geodetic map of the world, puts it right about here, very, very close to Cairo. Now, last thing, I'm basically done here. I just want to show you that how you can move that 0 Aries point. I mentioned that before. That 0 Aries by default, and what most astrologers do is put it right going through the east side of London, right on 0 longitude, right here. I can right click, go to customize features of all astromaps. A little note that I'm customizing features of all astromaps, and down here is adjustment to geodetic positions. I'll put this on plus 30 degrees to make it, you'll see why, it'll make this simple to explain. I'll click OK, and now we have the geodetic reference map. And if we look at London, England, we now have 0 Pisces instead of 0 Aries. So we've shifted everything 30 degrees. So if you believe that you should have 0 Pisces here, you can adjust it by that many degrees and have the astromap the way you want it. Very, very few people, at least that I know, who are strong believers in the geodetic astromap and use it a lot, use a different position for the layout of the grid, but it's available if you want it. So that's it. Final comments. Just to summarize, you can make a chart wheel with geodetic houses, and you can produce an astromap with geodetic houses. The astromap, the geodetic house astromap, what's called in Kepler and Sirius the geodetic planet map, because it maps your planets onto the geodetic house grid, is probably the most common use of geodetic houses. But you can select geodetic house system for a natal chart. So there's 2 ways of using geodetic houses, either as a chart wheel or as an astromap. And number 2, geodetic houses are commonly used in mundane astrology, meaning politics, weather, etc. They can be useful in natal charts, especially for seeing the relationship of a person to mundane affairs and mundane events. So that's what the geodetic astromap is. I receive questions fairly frequently, people saying, what is this geodetic? Somebody, this astrologer and that astrologer. For example, Martin Davis, well-known astrologer, is a very strong believer. He's written a wonderful book on astrolocality. He uses local space a lot. He also uses geodetic a lot. Chris McRae is another astrologer in Canada. Martin Davis is in Europe. Different astrologers in different places. She also is very keen about the geodetic houses. She uses the geodetic maps a lot, and now you've got a good idea of what the reference map is. It's what it says. It's a reference map to see what that grid on the world looks like, and the planet map is wonderful because it lets you see how your planets, you might say, interface or relate to that mundane, that world house system that we call geodetic houses. Okay, that's it, my friends. Thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.